Welcome to today's video and thank you so much for being here. Today we'll be talking about how the delicious ingredients in our Zahara cherry brightening peel can help you minimize the appearance of dark spots and achieve same softness, the same radiance as the cherry blossoms themselves. Since the peak cherry blossom season had passed not too long ago, we're also going to talk a little bit about the deep and the wonderful cultural significance of these beautiful flowers. The cherry brightening peel contains premium ingredients including wild and sweet cherry and prunes from the Prunus genus, the same botanical family as Sakura. It also contains an important ingredient I would like to talk to you about today, the seed oil extract of Rosa rubicinosa. But before we go deep into all of this, how these ingredients scientifically work, how they interact with your skin, let's talk a little bit about the cherry blossom. So the Prunus genus contains a large family of trees: cherries, plums, peaches, les apricots, and almonds, all sharing similar characteristics despite their different appearances and properties. Cherry blossom, or sakura, is perhaps the most important, the most culturally significant member of this botanical family, particularly in Japan, where history shows both extraordinary beauty but also a pretty sombre reality and complexity that not a lot of people know about. What is it, and how did all of this begin? In ancient Japan, cherry blossoms were very much integrated in what scholars call agrarian cosmology. Agrarian cosmology is basically a worldview where people understand life, society, the universe through agricultural cycles and seasons. For context, from the Yayoi period to the Edo era, Japanese social and economic structures centered almost entirely on wet rice agriculture, with up to 80% of the population engaged in farming as recently as the mid-19th century. Now, in this civilization, fundamentally structured on seasonal agricultural outcomes, an intimate relationship with nature was developed, and it shaped entire cultural frameworks and beliefs and values. So when cherry blossoms appeared in spring, they didn't just represent delicatesse and beauty and romance. No, they signaled the arrival and awakening of the earth, signaled the promise of crops to come, fertility in the entire cycle of life and death. This way, cherry blossoms were deeply connected to rice cultivation in Japan. And rice was not one of the most sacred plants, it was the most sacred plants in Japanese cosmology, because it embodied the ultimate life force and divine energy that sustained society. Cherry blossoms functioned as precise agricultural indicators within the system. Why? Because farmers relied on their blooming patterns to determine optimal rice planting times. This correlation was very sophisticated because early or late blooming periods, petal density, and even blooming duration all provided very important data on soil condition and weather patterns that would affect the coming harvest season. Of course, this relationship shows a lot more than just agricultural pragmatism. Both cherry blossoms and rice occupied equivalent positions in Japanese understanding, two manifestations of the same divine and sacred energy. One is ephemeral beauty that just came to announce the awakening of life. The other one is the sustaining and grounding force that would feed the community throughout the year. So when Japanese imperial courts established formal hanami rituals, they were codifying this ancient ecological knowledge into cultural practice. And all of this to acknowledge and to preserve this inseparable relationship, inseparable connection between cherry blossoms and rice, which is the foundation of Japanese civilization. Beyond agriculture, cherry blossoms were also connected to women's reproductive force and sacred love-making. Eventually, their iconography evolved and their planting became a tool for claiming political power. This began in the 9th century when the Emperor Saga strategically planted a cherry tree in front of his place, placing a Chinese-style plum tree to assert Japanese cultural identity. Fast forward to the Edo period when Japan was still under feudal system. And just entre parenthèses, feudal system, feudalism basically means a rigid, a radical social structure where land is exchanged for labor and loyalty. So the emperor was still around, but just as a spiritual figurehead. He didn't hold any power. And the real political power was in the hands of the shogun. Shogun is the top military leader who ran the country behind the scenes. Under the shogun were powerful regional landlords called daimyos, and under them the samurai who protected the land and enforced the daimyo's rule. And peasants worked the land under this very strict pyramid. Relatively speaking, this feudal system kept Japan isolated and stable for over 2 centuries. But everything changed in 1868 with the Meiji Restoration. Shogun was dismantled, the samurai lost all of their privileged status, and all of the power officially returned to the emperor, but now under a modern government. In this moment, Japan was trying to industrialize fast and catch up to the West. And to do this, it needed new symbols and a powerful nationalist unity that would bring the country together. And this is where the story of cherry blossoms take a dark turn. Because as Japan quickly modernized, the government began to actively construct a new national mythology, one that could bind a fragmented society and also justify its rising militarism. And so among the tools it turned to was an unexpected one. It was the cherry blossoms. What's crazy in this whole story is that this change was not just ideological, it was also botanical, because the cherry blossom that the Japanese government chose to elevate was not even a wild species. It was a cloned hybrid created by gardeners in the 19th century called Someichino, or the Tokyo cherry. Every tree was genetically identical, engineered in human-designed gardens, not discovered in ancient Japanese forests. Despite all of this, the state gave it a Latin scientific name to pass it off as a native wild species, even though it was not the case. In other words, they fabricated a sense of pure national nature and used it as a symbol of unity and identity and eventually obedience. So this is a case study on how aesthetics can be weaponized, because in this case, the Japanese government did not just appreciate cherry trees, they institutionalized them, planted them across the whole country. They rewrote textbooks, poems, even wrote children's songs to associate cherry blossoms with death for the emperor. Very young students, we're talking about children, were taught to see themselves as cherry blossom petals, beautiful and doomed, destined to fall in service to the state. So as Japan's imperial ambitions accelerated, especially after its victory in the Russian-Japanese War, the first time an Asian power defeats a European one, this symbolism only intensified. The government planted Tokyo cherries at military bases, war memorials, colonial outposts, both to inspire Japanese soldiers, also to assert dominance in occupied lands. And by World War II, this systematic manipulation reached its tragic climax with kamikaze operations. Kamikaze means divine wind, and it refers to the legendary typhoons that saved Japan from Mongol invasions in earlier centuries. In this case, they mean something completely different. They were suicide missions where young Japanese pilots crashed explosive aircraft into Allied ships. And so the government convinced these young men, many of them university students, young intellectuals with brilliant futures ahead, convinced them that dying like fallen cherry petals was the highest honor. So they were told that their sacrifice would protect their families, their homeland, and l'empereur. What's both fascinating and disturbing in this story is the systematic brainwashing involved. How did they convince these young intellectuals to do something like this? The state used different techniques. Education was one of the primary methods and emphasized loyalty, but it is not really loyalty but conformity. There was also intense military trainings that dehumanized the enemy, censorship that eliminated alternative viewpoints. There was also intimidation of dissenters and the use and manipulation of these cultural symbols, especially the cherry blossoms, to romanticize death. They created this whole environment where refusing to volunteer could bring shame to one's family and community. So this was not an individual choice, it was a psychological coercion on a massive scale. The second segment of the video, we're going to talk about 4 primary ingredients in Zahara cherry brightening peel. The first one is sweet cherry, or Prunus avium. It comes from the mountainous regions of Europe and Western Asia. These beautiful and graceful trees grow up to 32 meters tall with very unique, very distinctive white spring blossoms clustered like tiny umbrellas. What makes this extract unique in Zahara cherry brightening peel is natural compounds, particularly cyanogenic glucosides and hydrocinamic acids. So they calm inflamed skin by blocking specific inflammatory pathways. In real terms, they reduce inflammatory signals by nearly half, helping restore your skin's natural protective barrier without the harshness of synthetic alternatives. The second ingredient we chose to talk about today is prunes. This ingredient has so many fascinating compounds, so many benefits for health and also for the skin. And one of the natural compounds it has is 4-amino 4-carboxychromin 2,1. Now this ingredient on its own doesn't really do much, but it supercharges the fruit's antioxidants. Think of it as a catalyst that helps neutralize free radicals more effectively because it binds to other bioactive compounds in the same ingredient. And so together they visibly help reduce oxidative stress markers in skin cells, especially when it is used consistently. Third ingredient is the wild cherry. Remarkable about wild cherry is that its natural compounds match synthetic preservatives but without the concerning side effects. So the bark contains benzaldehyde derivatives, protect your skin by targeting harmful bacteria without disrupting your skin's natural microbiome. Plus, its compounds help maintain skin elasticity by protecting very important elastin fibers in the skin. The fourth and final ingredient we are covering today is the seed oil of Rosa rubiginosa. So this wild rose prospers in the high Indian mountains of Chile, Argentina, where challenging conditions create this extraordinary oil with unique properties, fresh herbaceous scent with apple-like whispers. What makes this oil different is its remarkably balanced essential fatty acid profile, which is about 83% of its composition. So it mirrors what your skin naturally needs. It feeds your skin, it replenishes your skin, repair compromised skin barriers with consistent use. It contains retinoic acid, which naturally helps promote the skin's natural collagen production, the irritation that synthetic retinoids can cause. So the reason I am personally obsessed with this product is that it does not just work on the surface of the skin, but it penetrates the deepest layers of the skin to deeply exfoliate, remove all of those dead skin layers and unravel your skin's natural beauty. So this is a must-have and it is suitable for all skin types except ultra sensitive. And that's it. If you would like to learn more about this product, you can check our website or you can reach out to us directly. If you enjoyed the content of this video, do not forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I will see you again very soon.